Hello, Cleveland. Welcome to the Dogland Podcast. I am your host, Anthony Joki. We had a little trouble getting this one started, but I am pleased to be joined by Matt Jergensen. He is one of the hosts of the Baltimore Blitz Podcast. How you doing tonight, Matt?
I'm pretty good. How are you? I'm just excited that we have football to look forward to this Sunday.
Yeah. With everything that's gone on this year, I'm kind of surprised that we actually got football. Hopefully, I said your name right because I have a history on this podcast of totally butchering names. So hopefully, I was able to pronounce that one right.
Well, actually, to be fair to you, I think you said Jergensen. I mean, that really is the correct pronunciation. I mean, I'm Norwegian and Viking and Scandinavian, so it's Jergensen, but that's only because that's how my great-grandfather, when he came over, just said, let's Americanize it and do it that way. So I will answer to either, so that works for me.
Well, you see, everybody butchers my last name because it's a Finnish name, and I've heard 1,000 different pronunciations, and the American version of it is Joki, but in Finland you would pronounce it Joki. So it's, those names from overseas can be a little difficult at times, and I'm glad I kind of was in the ballpark with yours.
Hey, not a problem, not a problem.
All right. Well, we wanted to get you in here because the Browns open up the 2020 season against the Baltimore Ravens this Sunday. An incredible division matchup to start the year, and we want to get you in here and get your thoughts of the Baltimore Ravens and see how this game is going to go. And we would be remiss not to start with the reigning NFL MVP Lamar Jackson. I know. It was incredible to watch him grow from those first few weeks, including that loss to the Browns in Week 4, that 40-25 loss. But to see his growth from those first few weeks throughout the rest of the season, pushing into the playoffs, do you think that's something he's going to be able to continue heading into this year? Because everybody's completely thrown off with the pandemic and all the different things that have gone on. So do you think that they're going to be able to carry some of that momentum and hopefully maybe him put up another MVP type season?
Well, I mean, that's going to be some of the question. I mean, he had, really just a season that was second to none last year. His ability to run the ball, his ability to improvise, and to throw the ball. He ended up with 36 touchdowns against 6 interceptions. I think that was probably the part that really surprised people the most. I think some of that has to do with the scheme that they run, which is so run-heavy with some play action. But, if you think about some of the things that he can improve upon, his deep ball actually wasn't bad, but it's throwing outside the hashes that he got exposed of a little bit in the Titans game in the playoffs that he still needs to improve upon. But it'll be very interesting as he still has that explosiveness and that ability to kind of, read the defense and sort of make you pick your poison. He should still continue to have a good year. You would expect that from the kind of skill set that he has. But we'll see if he can repeat what he did this past year. I know fans in Baltimore are just hoping for a playoff win. And, not to beat that dead horse yet, but, 0-2 so far, not to say a lot of quarterbacks didn't start off having difficulties in the playoffs, but we'll have to see, where things start with this Sunday.
Making the playoffs would be nice. That's only something the Browns have done once since returning in '99, and this is not the podcast to get into everything that happened before that with Baltimore. But, do you expect him to maybe cool down the running this season with how much depth they have at running back? Because when you look at the running back roster that they've assembled, they have Mark Ingram, Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, and then they drafted out of Ohio State J.K. Dobbins, which really grinds my gears because it seems like every year the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Baltimore Ravens draft a Buckeye and he comes back to bite us in the rear every time we play him. So do you think with the amount of depth that they have at running back that Lamar is going to run less this year?
I really would not expect that this season. John Harbaugh's already been kind of quoted as saying that he doesn't want to see Lamar run less. I know that he was definitely happy to watch him as he grew over this past season, not take as many hits in the open field, step out of bounds a little more often. But I think, again, as long as he still has that explosiveness, he's still going to possess that threat in the field. You talked about the running trio, or not to say trio, but the core they have here. Adding J.K. Dobbins, I was a little surprised that they were able to do it. But then again, when you have a player of his caliber fall to number 55 overall, you have to take him. He's the guy that probably really has me most excited about this Ravens offense. Justice Hill actually should be out this week with a thigh, but he provides a different kind of look in the backfield. And, of course, you've got the veteran Mark Ingram and Gus Edwards, who averaged about 5 yards a carry. So they're going to continue to be very run-heavy in this offense. And, of course, the question is going to be, can their wide receiver group be able to step up production-wise as opposed to last year? So, yeah, I wouldn't expect Lamar to slow down at all in terms of running the football, at least not at this stage in his career.
If you look at the offense, I think you might have hinted it right there. What do you see the Ravens offense, because it was so high power last year, the amount of points that they put up was crazy. If you look at the Ravens offense, what's the biggest flaw that you see with them?
The biggest flaw in terms of, and I kind of alluded to a little bit, was the production of the wide receiver group. I mean, there's a team, again, that's built to run. They use the tight ends. Mark Andrews is a top receiver, had a fantastic year, but played much of last year injured. You have Nick Boyle, who is also a role player that does well. And they ended up trading away Hayden Hurst, former first-round pick, to Atlanta. That'll be interesting because they really haven't found a replacement for him yet. They even brought in Crockett Gilmore, who was a Raven who played several years ago and has not played professionally, I think, in the last 3 or 4 years. So there's been a lot of talk about who would fill in that spot. Again, they're still using several tight ends in their scheme. But it really comes down to the wide receivers. Can Marquise Brown take a step forward? He's another guy who played injured, had issues with both ankles, and we saw him over the off season. He's bulked up. He's put on about 15 pounds of muscle. Continues to have that blazing speed. He really needs to become the number one receiver for Lamar Jackson, but it's really also the number 2, Miles Boykin, in his second year out of Notre Dame. He's a much bigger receiver. He has to step up as well, particularly become a possession receiver. So it's really about the wide receiver group. Are they going to be able to step up and provide production? You saw not too long ago the Ravens were kicking the tires on Dez Bryant. They did not bring him in and sign him yet, but if they continue to have issues over the beginning parts of the season, they may go back to him. So for me, it's about the wide receiver group.
Going back to that playoff game, and you talked about Lamar having trouble throwing outside the hashes. Was that on the receivers, or was it just a scheme thing that the Titans did to force him to throw that?
I think it was a little bit of both. I mean, when you go back to that game, there were a lot of things, again, I think like most games, a lot of things that if the play goes your way, there was a ball that clanged off of Mark Andrews' hands. There were some turnovers. The Ravens were pretty much, in an issue where they were put at a disadvantage for a lot of the first half and still were only down by 7 by halftime. And then, of course, Derrick Henry was able to really take over, particularly in the second half. Some of that, I think, was probably scheme, and some of that was, you saw at times, particularly that game, Lamar was not nearly as comfortable dropping back and finding receivers. So, and we know, again, when it comes to watching playoff football as opposed to the regular season, everything gets cranked up several notches. And, again, I think this is a really young team. When you look around at the skill positions, they still have a relatively young squad, and that also means inexperience. So you still have a lot of guys that were getting their first taste of playoff football. So it will be interesting. I mean, the idea, at least around here, and the buzz has been that this team would be able to compete for being that AFC representative along with Kansas City. So that's the goal. We'll see how they can step forward, not just this Sunday, but over the next quarter of this new season.
The Ravens, reloaded on defense. There were some struggles there last year, but they brought in Calais Campbell via trade. They drafted Patrick Queen, the linebacker. What kind of growing pains do you see from this defense, especially with the pandemic, not really being able to tackle? The Ravens have always been a physical team, and I don't think they won't be able to do that, but what kind of growing pains do you think implementing these guys into their defensive system, and will they have trouble early on in the season? Is it going to take them a few weeks to kind of get everything together?
Yeah, I think you would definitely expect some growing pains. I mean, when you look at the defense, the strength was in the secondary. You had 2 first-team All-Pros in Marcus Peters and Marlon Humphrey on the corners. But again, you had some issues in the middle. Replacing C.J. Mosley was not easy, who left for New York. So drafting Patrick Queen addresses that. Malik Harrison also, again, another guy who should hopefully provide some help in the middle. But the biggest thing, again, is Calais Campbell. Not only, again, is he a Pro Bowl player, but the leadership that he's provided to this group is really what has been telling coming out of camp. So again, the idea, and Derek Wolfe as well, again, coming from Denver. So, they really look to, on paper, address the issues that they had up the middle of the defense. And of course, I'd be remiss not to mention that Earl Thomas was sent packing. I know for probably a lot of people outside of Baltimore, that was seen as kind of a shocking move. But for most of us around here, the rumblings had kind of started even going back to week 3 during that loss to Cleveland. Thomas was, of all people, calling out Brandon Williams because he did not play in that game and was hurt. And Williams, again, is one of the more respected members of the locker room. And, Thomas never really quite fit in with the team concept of the Ravens. He was freelancing too much and didn't seem to be totally focused. And for that huge paycheck that he got, he ended up getting in a fist fight at practice and then was let go. So it'll also be really interesting to see how Deshaun Elliott, who is a third-year player, he's slated to take over that spot for Earl Thomas. Will he be able to, to play at a high level? He's certainly not going to play at Thomas's level, but is he going to be able to play and give the Ravens what they need at the back of the defense?
Yeah, you even saw in that matchup with the Browns early on in the season, that long run that Nick Chubb had, how quickly Earl Thomas seemed to give up on the play, which kind of calling other people out for not playing. It kind of makes you scratch your head, and I think it's kind of telling that he's not anywhere else right now. So maybe that's a addition by subtraction for the Baltimore locker room, which, and let's be completely honest, over the last 21 years has been a place of really solid character people and people who are well respected. Whether you go back to Ray Lewis and Ed Reed and all the great defensive players that the Ravens have had over the years, and he's just a guy. Just didn't seem to fit in. So we'll see how his replacement does, like you mentioned. And when you look at the defense and their potential weaknesses, in that matchup with the Browns, Nick Chubb ran all over the field. In a playoff game against the Titans, Derrick Henry racked up a ton of yards. Is that the way to beat this Baltimore football team? Is not only run against the defense, but pretty much play ball control to keep up or to try to keep Lamar Jackson off the field?
I certainly don't think that's a bad idea. Last year, this defense did struggle against the run. They gave about 4.4 yards per carry. You mentioned, Nick Chubb going wild in week 3, and certainly Derrick Henry, everybody saw on a national stage. So when you look at that, yeah, that's going to be the big question. Can Patrick Queen solidify the middle? Can some of their new additions up front do the job in slowing the run game? Because, I would agree. Right now, The Ravens appear to be very healthy. I only saw 3 people really on the injury report. No one really of consequence aside from Chris Moore, who's really just a special teamer, but everyone's pretty much healthy, and that'll be really the test for this defense. If to try to make teams one-dimensional and force them in third and long and force them to pass, because that's really their strength. But I would think, going forward, that's kind of the way to go. I mean, not only am I really, worried about Nick Chubb and making sure that they keep him in check, my bigger concern probably is Austin Hooper, because of his ability to get to the middle of the field. Will Patrick Queen be able to drop back in coverage? So again, I think it's running the ball, using play action, and then certainly taking your shots. The Browns, we know, have some weapons. You have Jarvis Landry, you have OBJ, you've got some talent there, and some talent that certainly scare you. But I would think that would probably be the Cleveland game plan: run the ball, use play action, and then take your shots downfield. And keeping Lamar Jackson off the field is certainly a good plan, as long as you can hold on to the football and make sure you convert, your third downs, and don't settle for field goals. Try to put the ball in the end zone.
Yeah, that's kind of what happened in that second matchup where, the Browns were up big and then they started settling for field goals, and then it was a blink of the eye and the Ravens had the lead before halftime. I was actually at that game and really couldn't believe what happened at that point heading into halftime. Like, well, this one's over. And, as an outsider, looking in, somebody that's in Baltimore, looking at Cleveland, from a different perspective, you mentioned the weapons that this team has on offense: OBJ, Landry, Hooper, Chubb, Kareem Hunt. There's a lot of people are really talking about the rookie tight end Harrison Bryant. What do you think it's going to take for this team to click? Is it just going to be average quarterback play from Baker Mayfield, or do you see it being another thing that's going to take this to get this team going?
I would say, again, someone on the outside looking in, there's really 2 things that, to me, need to change and need to improve for Cleveland to be in the playoff contention and to be in the picture. The first is at head coach, okay? Kevin Stefanski, I think, was a good choice. I think it'll be interesting to see what he does with the offense to try to help Baker Mayfield. But when you look at how many head coaches, I know I don't have to tell you how many head coaches you've had over the years, and on the other side we've got John Harbaugh, who's headed into his 13th year at the helm, and it's that kind of stability that you need. You need to build over several years, and it seems like at times the ownership or general manager, they don't have the patience. They don't have, they don't feel like they've got their right guy. And you end up moving on, and you got a new guy coming in and a new system and new verbiage and all this kind of stuff. And then, of course, it is Baker Mayfield. I mean, he had his struggles last year. I mean, you can't, throw for 22 touchdowns and have 21 interceptions and expect that to be good enough. I think I like some of the things, at least on that perspective, of what Kevin Stefanski wants to do, try to simplify some things for him, make his reads a little bit easier, maybe use more play action, use the middle of the field. And it's really what it comes down to. I mean, and you're right. I don't think it has to be Baker Mayfield has to be great. I think he has to be good. I think he has to be, almost just competent running this offense. He's got a great running back in Nick Chubb. He's got plenty of guys to throw the ball to. And it seems like they upgraded the offensive line. I know that was an issue as well in the past. So to me, it's all about that stability, providing stability underneath center, but also on the sidelines. And once you start getting some things going, then it becomes contagious. And I think you could build off that. But plenty of talent in Cleveland. Those things need to change for them to kind of reach that next step.
Yeah, the biggest question is the defense. With the injuries that they've had, losing Joe Schobert in free agency, looks like Greedy Williams might not play this weekend. I know he didn't practice today. Not having Mac Wilson, who was projected to take Joe Schobert's spot in the middle of the defense. They're kind of running I know they switched to pretty much a 4-2-5 based defense, but um, with all the injuries that they've had, I can't imagine it's going to be very easy to stop this Ravens defense on Sunday, let alone any defense in the NFL. And you just kind of hope that the offense can do their best to keep up in terms of scoring points. And with the weapons, I think is certainly possible. But Baker just doesn't have to force things. He needs to be more of a distributor of the football, more so than trying to force things. And there were a lot of times last year, and 21 interceptions. I mean, you saw him force a lot of things and trying to force a lot of stuff to Odell to try to keep him happy, and it just wasn't a good mix last year. And a lot of that had to do with the play calling, and that was just a disaster. And I really believe that Stefanski's going to do a better job of that this season. But the defense is where I really see us struggling this year, and they're going to have to step up big time. I know the defensive line is good, but it's everything else behind that is going to be a question mark.
I know, and I guess just, again, outside looking in, you're right. You have a talent like Myles Garrett coming back, and he was somebody that didn't play in that second game last year. He's probably chomping at the bit and ready to play. But I do understand, you look at some of the injuries, particularly, again, linebacker and corner, that look like are present for this upcoming matchup. Again, there is talent on that side of the ball too. But I agree, when you look at those things, besides getting the offense clicking, the defense needs some players to step in and to step up to allow the offense to do some work and not just getting shootouts every Sunday.
When you look at this division, it's a 3-team race. I would say I want to put the Browns directly behind the Ravens. I would put them more as like a 2B team behind Pittsburgh. But I've with the expanded playoffs and more teams getting in, I kind of feel like all three of the Ravens, the Steelers, and the Browns can somehow sneak their way into the playoffs this season. Do you kind of have that sentiment as well?
Yeah, I definitely think it's possible. I mean, we look at the division. I know we always feel like our division is, or has been over the years, a pretty strong division. I mean, right now you have Cincinnati with Joe Burrow. They're kind of in rebuilding mode. It'll be interesting to see how he does in his rookie year. And then, of course, you've got the Steelers. Roethlisberger is, of course, the key. Is he, as he comes back this year, is he going to be able to still conjure up some of that magic that he's done over the years, or is he finally going to really start to wind down his career, and are you going to see his production start to drop? And that's really going to be, the key for them, certainly offensively, is if he can play well, they'll always have a shot. To me, the Steelers have always been kind of the masters of the 13-10 game for years. The defense is good enough that they hold you down, they get you down into this kind of a slugfest, and, they always end up kind of finding ways to win in the end. And then there's this period of times where the offense has really clicked, and it's interesting seeing them now that, Le'Veon Bell is gone, and some of the wide receivers they had are, Antonio Brown's gone. And, for a small period of time, they were really an offense that could crank up points. But I don't know. They're a team you kind of look at every year to go, is this the year they finally really go down? And I know last year, once Roethlisberger was injured, they had their struggles. But I don't know. It really comes back to Roethlisberger for me. So it is kind of, to me, like Ravens 1 and sort of Steelers and Cleveland battling it out for 2. And I agree, all 3 could end up with a change in the playoff scenario.
All right. As an outsider looking in, somebody who hates the Steelers as much as we do, what did you think of Helmet Gate that went down against them last year?
I think, like most things, it really, again, depends on your point of view. Certainly, the Pittsburgh fans will have their point of view, and certainly the Cleveland fans will have their point of view. But, Man, I kind of look at it. I mean, I think that, Rudolph certainly had some instigating issues and measures in there. You usually don't just pull the bonnet off of somebody and whack them in the skull, if not for some kind of good reason. So, I don't know. It's always hard because you have to make your decision on how you feel about it based on outside information and just kind of like what you see. And I know kind of what I saw, somebody reacting to something that they thought was a pretty egregious kind of thing. And it's interesting, again, you saw how the punishment that was handed down to Garrett, and Rudolph, doesn't really get a whole lot. So I don't know. I guess, again, to as someone, again, who doesn't necessarily have a horse in this fight, but I agree 100% with you that I am certainly not a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, yeah, I would probably side a little bit more on the side of Myles Garrett.
All right, let's get down to predictions on Sunday. When it's all said and done, between the Browns and Ravens on Sunday at around 4:15, 4:30, who is going to come out on top and take a 1-0 lead in the division?
I expect this to be a really good game. And I know, without seeing any preseason action, here we are in week one, and a lot of people really can only go on what which is, all right, what happened last year. And, of course, it's hard because last year was last year. You've got new players. You've got another year, all those kinds of things. And, even though this is technically a road game for Cleveland, there will be no fans on the stands. And I know as someone who has made it a habit to go to several Ravens games a year, it's a great atmosphere to go watch a game. And it's people really get after it. It's exciting. It's loud. And that's just not going to be there. So besides the travel, there's not going to be that much of an advantage to, basically playing at home. But for my money, at least for right now, I've got this as a close game. I've got this as a high-scoring game. And I do think that Baltimore wins out 31-24 in what should be a game full of offensive fireworks. I think there should be a lot of scoring in this, and it should be a fun, one of the more intriguing and interesting fun matchups in the NFL in the first week of action.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think this is going to be very high scoring. I also think that it's going to be very undisciplined. I think there's going to be a lot of penalties early on with, not having the preseason and not really getting used to the officials this year. So I think that early on it's going to be kind of sloppy, but I also think it's going to be high scoring. And by sloppy, I also mean I think there's going to be a lot of missed tackles, a lot of big chunk plays, and it's going to be, I think, exciting football to watch at the beginning of the year, and then it'll kind of come back down to normal as teams kind of get into the groove of everything. But I haven't made an official pick yet because I always lay around the fence right till the end. But I'm leaning towards the Ravens just because, it's the reigning MVP. The Browns defense is kind of in a bind right now, and I'm not sure week one our offense is going to go out there full firepower. I know that a lot of people expect them to, especially with the talent that's on the field, but I think that it's going to be a little bit of a slow start as they try to adjust to a new head coach, and with Baltimore having the same system in there with Harbaugh for so many years, I think that they definitely have the edge in this one, and unfortunately the Ravens are going to come out victorious week one.
All right. Well, I definitely like the way you think on that, but I do agree. I mean, there are some things specifically. I mean, one thing that really has helped Baltimore is that they didn't lose either of their coaches. I mean, they were both interviewed for head coaching jobs. So, you had Don Martindale on the defense, and, he was somebody who was looked at, of course, and didn't get a job, and same with Greg Roman. So both guys are back as well as the head coach. So they can hopefully continue to build upon what they instituted last year. So I think that's another thing that's really going to help them as we get out to a start. But I mean, look, it's week one. It's the NFL. We're going to see football that counts. We're just going to see football. So there's a lot to be happy about, a lot to be excited about as we hopefully slowly get back to some kind of normal amidst all this craziness that we've been thrown into over the last, 7-8 months.
Yeah, I know. I was really happy to watch some college football this last Saturday. I was so happy that Marshall and Eastern Kentucky were on television, and even though that was a blowout game, it was nice to sit down and watch a little bit and kind of see how weird it's going to be watching football without full stadiums. I know some places will have some fans, like there were 12,000 people at the Marshall game I was watching, which is like a third of their capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So I know there'll be fans at Browns games. They said the 10%, which is around 6,000. I don't know how much of a difference that's going to be. It's going to be very interesting to watch and kind of hear if they're going to have them on top of the pumped-in crowd noise. So it's a weird year, but like you said, I'm glad that we're getting football, and hopefully it's a really exciting year for both our teams. I know I think that when it comes down to the divisional race, it's going to be interesting at least until week 13 or 14, which many years that the Browns are kind of out of it halfway through the season, and we're already talking the draft. So I think it's going to be a fun year. It's going to be a weird year, that's for sure. And I'm just like you. I'm glad that we get to watch football on Sunday.
Yeah, I know. Like you said, that it's going to be different depending on where you go. I know in Baltimore we had hopes. I think they said they were going to have about 7,000 fans. They did finally announce last week that they were going to have no fans, at least until further notice. Now, that may be something that changes if conditions improve, and they've said that they'll kind of revisit that. But, yeah, I mean, look, hope springs eternal, right? I mean, everyone's 0-0 to start, and that's part of being a fan. I mean, it's the fact that you follow your team, you prepare, you get ready, and then you click on the TV or you get out to the game, and hopefully, you cheer your team on. And hopefully you walk away happy after 3 hours. And if not, you get to do it all over again the following week. So the NFL's back. I know I'm excited. I know so many people are excited to just hopefully feel like things are normal. It will be really interesting to see because, watching the NBA playoffs and watching some other sporting events, it's sports, but it's not quite the same. So hopefully the NFL will proceed, and it will be able to go with no stoppages all the way to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, hopefully we get that, and like you said, hopefully there's no stoppages. Hopefully, you don't see situations that's kind of happened in baseball with, multiple players and people in organizations testing positive where, they've had to postpone games and do doubleheaders and do all kinds of things. And, hopefully we can go uninterrupted until the Super Bowl, and hopefully one of our teams is in it. Hopefully it's not the Ravens because
sure,
the Super Bowl should be ours. But again, that's the conversation for a different story or for a different day. Matt, I really appreciate you battling through all the technical problems we had trying to get this thing started. If you want to let everyone know where they can follow you on Twitter, where they can read your work, where they can listen to the Baltimore Blitz Podcast, the floor is yours.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, I am Matt Jergensen, and you can find me on Twitter at MattJergs, and you can find my work at BaltimoreSportsPub.com. Baltimore Sports Pub, we actually do a daily podcast. My co-host, Brent Harris, who has covered the team since its inception in 1996. He's worked at Comcast and does the post-game show on 105 The Fan. He and I have been longtime friends. So he created this site, and he and I have been doing the Baltimore Blitz now going on our second year. And we actually got to get ready to record our weekly podcast tomorrow. And you can find that pretty much anywhere where you find your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, etc. And any of the other work, again, you can find at BaltimoreSportsPub.com. So I definitely appreciate you having me, and here's the football.
Yes, here's the football. I'm glad we get to watch Houston, Kansas City tomorrow night. That should be a very fun game. And as we get on
Yep.
out here, be sure to follow the Dogland on Twitter at the Dogland. Be sure to follow me at Anthony Joki. You can find me there as well. With all that, we're going to get on out here. I really appreciate Matt coming on and talking some Ravens. Me and Jack will be on within the next couple days to kind of give a final preview for the game and give our predictions as we head into Sunday, as well as any other kind of breaking news that happens as we prepare for the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday. Until then, and as always, go Browns.